Welcome back. This is Bettor Things with Joe Bianca, episode 4. We have an exciting announcement for this episode. We have our first sponsorship. It's a little outfit called the Breeders' Cup. You may have heard about them. Obviously, the gold standard in World Championship racing. They're going to be sponsoring a segment where I give out plays for that weekend's Breeders' Cup Challenge races. For this week, it's the Haskell. Really exciting race, really star-studded race. So stay tuned later on after the interview, and we'll have my plays for the Haskell coming up this Saturday at Monmouth. But in the meantime, I had a really cool chat yesterday with Michael Beychok, who's a public handicapper for the New Orleans Times-Picayune. He famously won the NHC, winning a $1 million prize back in 2012. Very smart, very sharp guy who has a lot of opinions on everything racing, even a little bit of politics as well. He's a political consultant in his regular life. So we had a lot of fun, talked about a lot of stuff. Check out our interview with Michael Beychok. All right, so we're thrilled to welcome to Bettor Things with Joe Bianca. This time, Michael Beychok, who was a 2012 NHC winner, won $1 million for getting that contest home. He's a very outspoken guy in racing. I've actually been looking forward to this since I hit him up. Michael Beychok, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Joe. I'm really looking forward to whatever we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we've given Michael very few details about what we're actually going to talk about. But let's start with this. I read an interesting story about how you got into racing, and I honestly couldn't believe that the interviewer didn't ask a follow-up question. James Carville took you to the track. That was your first time?
Yeah, I know. That's hard to believe. So, so I was probably 12, 13. James Carville worked for my dad. James was a lawyer back then, not a very good one, which is why he was babysitting me on a Saturday instead of doing a deposition, which I think my dad was doing. So he said, "Hey, you got to watch Mike for the day." And James said, "Fine, but I'm going to the track." And so Dad said, "Fine, take him to the track." So we went to New Orleans. We loaded it up, so he must have been probably, I'm guessing 26, 28, something like that. And we loaded up in some, junker and with his buddies, his degenerates, and we went to the fairgrounds. And I just, then the story becomes very similar, to many other people. I just fell in love with it. I love the competition. I love being able to, decipher the numbers and pick, try to pick winners against other people who were much older than me. And we kept doing it. And then my dad, kind of got a little jealous, I think, because he's like, "Well, you're going to the track again with James. I'm going to go." And so we started going, and he got into horse racing, bought some horses. And that's how I got into it. What's the follow-up question?
No, I mean, that was, I'm saying, it's not going to be a follow-up because that's the whole story. It sounds like you rarely hear about the kid who gets his parents into racing. Usually it goes the other way around, but it sounds like right. Is your dad still into racing?
My dad passed away in '94, but yes, gotcha. He was. We went to the Derby. I believe the first Derby we went to was '79, and then we went for 15 years in a row, maybe 20 years in a row. I think my last Derby with him was 1994, which was the year that he died. So yeah, we did not miss a Derby for the day we started going. And he took me to Saratoga for the first time. The only time until my past few trips. And I'm going to say 1980 I think it was the Wise Times Travers. We went for the Travers. And we went up there, and then I did not go back until probably 2014. And I've rarely missed a summer, although this summer is looking a little iffy whether I get back up there.
Well, we hope to see you up there, but you're known for a lot of things these days, but you were first best known for winning the NHC in 2012. Big purse, obviously, and had to be like the highlight of your life as a horse player. But how did you get to that point where you could win a contest like that? Like, there had to be a lot of hard lessons along the way playing in handicapping tournaments. Like, what were the things that you took from some of the earlier struggles to help you get there?
Well, that's really what it was, Joe. It was learn by trial by fire. Because there weren't any books written on it. There weren't any articles written on, basically back then. Pete Fortentow's book, which was a great book about the contest player. Not just because I'm in it, but it was the first and probably only book written about how to win a contest. That came later. So it was trial by fire, and I was doing it wrong for so many years. I say that, but I won second place in one of the U-Bet. I don't know if you remember U-Bet. That was the I think Twin Spires ultimately bought them. There was a probably a 2 or 3 month contest, live money. And I'm going to not remember when it was, but I think it was the Fusai Pegasus Derby year.
It was 99, I think, 99 or 2000.
Yeah, that's right. And so I ended up winning second place in that for 20,000. And so, I kind of thought, and that was live money though. So the NHC, of course, was $2 win place. And I made the mistake that most people make, which I was making in my betting as well at the time, was just, try to pick winners. And I know that sounds counterintuitive to a lot of people, maybe who are listening to this or just getting into horse racing. But it's the most important lesson that I ever learned in gambling and horse racing is, you have to look for value. And just picking winners, especially at horse racing, is just not going to get you to be a profitable player. And especially in contests, I think that axiom is probably, multiplied many times, because picking winners in $2 win place contests you'll just lose. You have to find some value. So I ended up one year at the fairgrounds, I don't know what it was, mid 2000s, entering a contest just because I was there. Had never heard about the NHC. Might have been like 2008 or something. And I ended up finishing fifth. I missed it by a dime to go to Vegas. And then I started looking into seeing what is all this about, right? And so I qualified the next few years. In 2011, I finished 23rd. And that was the first year that I walked into that room, with 400, 500 other people and really thought that I had a chance to win. And I think that was part of it too. I'd figured it out a little bit about how to play. And then when I walked into the room in 2012, I knew I could win, but I also knew that there were probably 300 people in there that couldn't win. It's not like that anymore. I mean, everybody that's in that room, probably 90% can win the contest. I faced a little bit of a softer field, just because people were just kind of getting to know how to play contests. A lot of them were like me in 2008. When you walked in there, you just didn't know how to play. So that's how I learned how to play. I learned how to play online, just trial and error, and most of it was error. But ultimately, I think I figured it out. I was lucky enough to win it in 2012.
Can you just talk quickly about the difference between live money contest and the $2 win place contest? Because I find the live money contest a little bit more congruous to betting the horses on a day-to-day basis. Whereas with the $2 win place contest, there aren't necessarily races where you zero in on one horse and say, this is my pick. And I just found that in the win place contest, there's so many times where my alternate wins and I'm just kicking myself because I didn't pick the right horse. What do you prefer? And does your strategy differ? How does your strategy differ between those two formats?
Yeah, well, I'm not a very good live money player. I don't know for whatever reason. I just haven't figured out and I don't play a lot of them. That's number one. But number two is I just don't. I'm not very good at it. I've placed in a few. Saratoga one year, finished second. $2 win place, you're kind of shooting for. There's usually a limited number of races, 10, and you're shooting for a score that you're trying to get to. So let's say it's 10 races, you probably want to get to 100. That's going to usually put. So you have to kind of construct plays that take you there. And if you're picking 2-to-1s all the time, or 3-to-1s, you're not going to get to 100. So to me, it's almost a little bit easier because that when you look over your sheet and you say, wow, I have 6 favorites or 6 second choices and I'm not going to get to 100. Somebody's going to get to 100, right? So you got to go back and it's a little bit easier for me to do that. And I like to play longer shots anyway, so it just lends itself. I'm just not a very good favorite player. So in live money, you can construct tickets that use the favorite and win a lot of money. And that to me is it's polar opposite of what I do anyway on a regular basis. So that's maybe why it's difficult. But I think there's also a shoot for a number. But in the live money where you're using real money, there's going to be a Del Mar contest in a couple of weeks that I want an entry to, and I'll be in. So it's $3,500 of real money. And you can construct tickets to get you to a certain, but you really don't know what it's going to be, what the winning number is going to be. And it seems like it just always comes down to the last race, you know. And if you don't have a good, strong opinion on the last race, you're almost like forced to go all in to get to whatever, 60,000 maybe, or 50,000, that you got to get to. And it doesn't feel natural to me to do that. Like let's say if I got 20 grand going into the last race at Del Mar, to win 150 or 200. But I don't have an opinion on the race, then it's really difficult to push all that 20,000 into the middle.
Yeah.
Real money. But there are people that do it. My very good friend Brian Shinvert and his dad Bill, they've had tremendous success. Some people can, not only can push it in, but can also construct tickets. A lot of it is ticket construction, which I'm not very good at. So two things I'm not good at, which means that's why I'm not really good at live money.
Gotcha. All right. So this is a question about something you wrote earlier this year. It's actually, there's a story in the TDN about it by Bill Finley, my colleague and co-host on the Writers Room. You were basically leaving horse betting and moving on to sports betting. Judging by you being in that Del Mar contest, hasn't completely set in yet. How's that going? Because I know it's an easier thing to say than do, especially when you've grown up with it. It gets in your blood betting the horses. So where are you on that now?
Yeah, so it's hard. When I said it, I meant it. My buddies, we usually go to Saratoga. So they decided that we're going to Del Mar. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to be at Del Mar, I'm going to try to get in this contest, max. So I played a few feeders to get in and I won. But no, I had quit, right after the NHC, I had stopped completely. So as someone said, I didn't quit. I was just on strike. And I'm on strike basically. So, I'll cross the picket line for the Derby, right? I'll cross the picket line when somebody wants to go to the track or I want to go to the track. But on a daily basis, I'm probably, 95% of what I was betting. I'm only betting maybe 5%. And I don't do it on a daily basis anymore, which I used to do probably for the last 5 or 6 years. So, there are days that I don't open up Twin Spires or, look at a form or anything. And those are good days and the weekends are better. And it's more of a protest. It's more of a strike. And so I'm still in that place because even though HISA has become, the law of the land July 1st, it's not necessarily what it is yet because we don't even have drug testing that they're implementing. So that's my strike. That's my protest. Once, hopefully racing can, introduce a uniform drug testing program that's administered by a national entity, then I'll probably take another look. But yes, no, I've moved, not all of my horse racing, but I've definitely moved to betting fantasy sports and sports, not every sport.
All right. Well, I want to ask you about that. I want to ask you about sports betting in a second, but I also just wanted to quote you from the story I was referencing before and your justification for why you said you were leaving. You said, I'm just fed up with the drug cheating. I'm fed up with the takeout. I'm fed up that we apparently can't get into a position to implement new and better drug testing. I have more outlets now to gamble. I live in Louisiana, which was a state up until last year where the only thing available was horse racing. Now there's daily fantasy sports, which I enjoy, and the takeout is much, much better. Soon we'll have online sports betting. I'm a consumer. I have just found better products. I honestly can't argue with a lot of that. I think there are a lot of horse players out there who will be listening to this that feel that and empathize with that. My only pushback would be that I think at least with HISA, which you mentioned, and I think with more tracks, at least major tracks, being a little more sensitive to horse player issues, I do think that there is some progress in that regard. Do you think that racing at least is moving in the right direction on some of those things, even if it's not where you think it should be to get your business back?
Yes, without question. First, there is HISA, right? Which this time last year we didn't have. They are moving forward. They're going to implement hopefully drug testing at some point, maybe next year. There are tracks that are paying attention to takeout, that are offering, lower takeout pick fives and pick fours, 12%, which is pretty good, So I think they are. So yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of moving, but horse racing is like a slug. I mean, a sloth. I mean, we just, as an industry, if they're ever in agreement with each other, it still takes a long time to move, just like any industry, I would suppose. But we don't have a commission, and like football, when a rule in football impacts coaches or players or fans, the commissioner makes a decision and it's done, and we just don't have that. We have, probably 39 or 40 state racing commissions that regulate racing. And they're all different rules, so it's very difficult, but I'm hopeful that one day that it'll be cleaner, not cleaned up totally, but cleaner, that I'll come back and because I love it. And look, there's very few places you can go and you can bet $1, and win $10,000, right? I mean, you just on a trifecta or superfecta. I mean, that's not that's not gambling. Games don't offer those kind of odds, and so that's appeal.
Oh, yep. Unless you hit like a slot jackpot or something, you can't make that kind of money that quickly. Which, and I mean, you obviously can't lose money as quickly either with other things. But let's talk about your sports betting handle. What have you shifted to specifically? What's worked well for you? What are some things that you want to get better at? Like how is that going for you?
So I'm not really a major sport player. So I'm not going to play. I don't play any baseball. I don't play any. I'm talking about sports betting. I was trying to play daily fantasy baseball on DraftKings or FanDuel, and I'm just not very good at it. It seems to me that it's much more complicated than other sports. So it was very difficult for me to win. So I stopped until I learned some more. I bet tennis. I bet a lot of tennis. I watch a lot of tennis. I know that I play tennis. I know that there's, the line makers don't seem to sometimes catch up with players that have improved quickly, and they can improve quickly, and also surfaces. They don't really sometimes factor in surfaces into, well, they do, of course, but it may lag a little. So I feel like I have a little bit of an edge, and I'm doing, I win money at tennis. I'll play soccer, Premier League soccer. Again, I think, and also MLS. I'm riding a team right now, Austin Football Club, on the road. They're just like road warriors, and they always get their dogs, and so that's a good one. But I watch soccer as well. So it's two things that I watch, I enjoy, and just apply those sort of those observations, and also gather other people's. There are a lot of good experts in both tennis and in soccer that are offering their opinions for free. And so you scrape those and you see what's what. And so those are the two things I've really. Now I'll play a lot of fantasy football when it comes up. Oh, I had a really good score in golf about a month ago. $3 contest, and I took first for 3,000. So that was a good.
Wow.
But golf is just golf is like, it's the most random. I mean, it is just, it's almost too random, but it is fun to watch, and daily fantasy golf is pretty good. But I'll do daily fantasy football as well.
So I guess you did find that thing that makes you money as quickly, or
I'm ahead, but I'm really not one of these people. I know if anybody knows anything about daily fantasy, there's people that play, like if the entry limit is 150, for a $3 contest, or a 10 or 20, they're putting in 150 entries. I'm definitely more of a single entry person. I don't have the edge, that they have, the people that are doing multiple entries. So a lot of it is just like horse racing. I mean, contests, you got to pick what's best for you. And the single entries are, I can reduce the pros' edge a lot by just going single entry.
I'm stoked to hear that you're a tennis guy, because that's something we have in common. I also play tennis, watch tennis, bet on tennis. One of the angles that I like is over-under games, and especially in women's matches, because it'll often be like 19 and a half or 20 and a half, maybe 21 and a half. And then you don't even need 3 sets. You really only need 2 competitive sets if you like the over. So that's something that I've latched onto. But what about you? Is there a specific angle with tennis you like?
I need to go back and look recently because, I played a lot over the last month or so, leading, the French and leading up to the French and the Wimbledon. I would guess that the majority of my bets are over and under games, as you said. It just, when somebody's going to be competitive and tennis, how it just, that third set always presents itself, it seems. Especially, like if you get a player, to me, it's, I don't know, plus or minus 240, which is that's a pretty good favorite. But, it's a pre-tournament. It's not a major. And they're going to play somebody who's really good right now and hungry. They may lose the first set, and come back and win 2 out of 3. The angle that has worked for me, I crushed in Wimbledon. Djokovic will lose the first set. It looks like almost 8 out of 10 times now. 8 out of 10. So you got 2 things going for you there. You can bet lose first, the other player to win the first set. In the final, I actually bet lose first set, win match, plus 410. That was, or plus 450. Wow. And that's what happened. I mean, but for some reason, again, it's just a pattern he's fallen into. He doesn't care if he wins the first set or not. I mean, I know in his first 4 or 5 comeback matches, he lost the first set in every one. And I think at Wimbledon, he probably lost, 3 or 4 out of the 6 matches first set, something like that. So those little things, just that's observation. It's non-statistical, totally non-statistical, which is tough these days. I mean, because you're competing against, so many people that have, that have algorithms and programs and they're going to be good. They're going to be better than you. So you got to get in there early on a line, or else it's going to really move, and you're not going to beat, the closing line, which is kind of the whole game.
I totally agree about the up and coming player too, because I was big on Jannik Sinner in this tournament, and when he played Djokovic, I was big on the money line for him, and he was up 2 sets to none. As soon as Djokovic broke and to start that third set, I took Djokovic going the other way.
Well, that's the other thing.
I was able to hedge it.
Yeah, that's a great, that's the other thing is I do tend to do a lot of in-game on tennis.
Yeah.
Who was it today? Team was playing somebody, and he lost the first set, and he was plus 110. He may have ended up getting higher than that, but I took plus 110. Now, he came back and won, he had a couple match points against him, but, you could take a player who was minus, 180, 200 and get that player for plus 110. When there's really he just lost the first set. That's all. It's not a big, especially those higher end players like that. They just buckle down and come back and they can grind it out.
Well, and like you're saying, I find the in-game betting most profitable in other sports too, like basketball and football. I'll bet a little bit like player points over under. Like I remember Devin Booker had like 2 points at halftime of one of those Suns playoff games, and his total for the game at halftime was 10.5. So it's like you're basically betting, if you're betting against that, he's not going to get double digits. Even if he had a slow start to the game, like football, you'll see a guy with like 100 yards receiving with like a quarter and a half to go, and his over under will be 120 or something like that. That's one catch. It's one catch down the field, and I do agree that it seems like that. Those are the things that the betting sites don't really adjust the markets to very well. They're good at setting the initial lines, but once the action starts, it's kind of a little bit of a free-for-all, and they're just guessing a lot more. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if they're guessing, but I don't know that they're as efficient as they are with a straight game line. They're much smarter than I am. But they're certain, but they're not. There is something to be said, just like horse racing, about observation. So, a number does not necessarily mean what a number means. I know that's talking in code, but a guy that has scored 4 points in the first half, but's getting open looks, and he's just missing. I mean, that may mean that he's going to keep getting those open looks and score. A horse that wins with a terrible trip or a great trip or whatever doesn't look so good on the next day, or the next race. So it's just, I think it's using the thing that I have because I'm not a computer numbers guy, just the power of observation. Probably, I don't know that it gives me an edge. It gives me, a smaller advantage,
Yeah. Well, and like in-game betting too, you actually get to see the action first. When you bet before the game, you're betting blind. Basically, you're just presuming what will happen. In-game betting, you actually get to see the flow of the game, like you're saying. If a guy's open and he's missing shots, you brought up the computer wagers. That's a topic that's on a lot of horse players' minds because they feel like they're getting squeezed out by these giant computer wagers and these algorithms, and it seems like it's harder and harder for a meat and potatoes horse player like me or you to overcome that. Now we've seen some steps to combat that. Naira, I think, has done a good job stopping that wagering within 2 minutes of post time. What do you think that is something that can actually really drive people out of the game? Do you think it's something that can be better combated by other sports? Like, where do you think the future of that is? Do you think it's just something that's going to get worse, or could it get better?
I think it's going to get worse, and I don't think it's just going to be the computer groups, but definitely it drives, this from playing for so long. A horse that, might pay $8 5 years ago is paying probably, I'm generalizing, but that horse is probably paying $6.20, and so that in itself just hurts, the profitability of people like you and me. Whereas the computer program is going to find that horse and has found that horse, that they couldn't find, that the general public couldn't find before. And so, yes, that hurts, but we're not going to get rid of it. I mean, there are going to be people out there that are using computer programs, whether they're, you call them computer groups or whatever they are. That's just part of the game. So that's part of one of the things that has driven, it's just harder, Joe. I mean, it's harder to make money betting on horse racing than it ever has been, period.
Yep.
Period. First of all, they've gotten rid of, I don't want to get on a soapbox. So I'm going to take a
Please do. Please, this is the show for that.
No, but they've gotten rid of the bets that I think give bettors like you and I, kind of an advantage. Like, to me, the $2 pick six, or the dollar, maybe the $1 pick six, but the $2 pick six, was just a bet that was good for me because I guess it gave you a range of races. You could single in on an opinion and wager, a reasonable amount of money, and you weren't competing against so many combinations, because now we're competing in so many combinations because it's 20 cents. So somebody's going to have your combination, right? Whereas before there might be 2 or 3 people. That's just I just rue that. That was a terrible day when they, basically we don't have any $2 pick six anymore.
Yeah.
But it's just harder to make money at horse racing because the horses that you figure are winning or going to win are just paying less. Even the $12 horse is paying 8 something, and that just makes it difficult on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, it's the computer wagering thing is tough because they're not breaking any rules specifically. And then, you can't legislate against innovation in that way, but it is squeezing us guys out. And yeah, I mean, especially the stuff the stuff that looks like past posting, but we know isn't, when the odds drop during the race, like tell a sports bettor that might happen to them and see if they come back.
Right. Tell a sports bettor that you go bet. And when they kick off, you're getting +7. Okay. But when the guy catches the ball and he's at the 30, you now get +6.
Yes.
How does, that to me is just like, we're not going to fix the computer wagering part, but we got to be able to explain it to a bettor. Like, you bet this horse at 6-1. Wow, he won, and you get 7-2 or 3 to. It's just not. It's not sustainable. No. It's just not sustainable.
No,
I mean, it's
Yeah, that's kind of where fixed odds betting comes in, but that needs to be mass adopted across the country. I hope it goes well in New Jersey. I got to ask you about the Bob Baffert lawsuit, if you're willing to talk about it. That was something that spoke to me specifically because I was a guy who needed Mandaloun that day. I would have had the pick 4. I had a win bet on him. Probably would have been like 6,000 or 7,000 if Mandaloun had won that race, other than Medina Spirit. But I assume going into that, you knew that was going to be a tough case to prove injury, specifically, instigated by Bob Baffert. Tell me your thought process in launching that class action suit and kind of just how it went in court.
My thought process was strictly selfish to begin with. I was pissed off,
Yeah.
right? Now look, I had the exacta. I cashed out really nice. But I could have cashed out 15 times higher, 70 grand or something, or 70, whatever it was. So I was just pissed. And then, when the drug test came back, then I really got, okay, no one is doing anything about this. Now, at that time, I didn't know, what we know now, that Churchill Downs, was going to actively find some punitive action to take against Baffert, that NYRA was going to ban him. So, but back in, the month after his drug test, it was just going to be, no one's going to do anything. So I was like, I'm going to do something. I don't know. It's a long shot, but this is horse racing. So I'm going to do something and make a statement, basically. And so, we sued. We sued first in California. We moved the suit to New Jersey. We have a couple hundred class action members currently. It's still in the courts. I mean, we really have not had any hearing yet. There's been a motion to dismiss filed by Baffert's lawyers, which the federal judge has not ruled on yet. Now, that's the big hurdle. If we can get past a motion to dismiss, which I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know whether we can or can't. It's probably 50-50. I don't know. But if we can, then we have some avenues available to us to start gathering evidence, taking depositions, and trying to find some relief for the people that were harmed, that were frauded. I mean, there's no question that Bob Baffert, the horse was drugged. That's a fact. The horse was drugged with a drug that was banned. That's a fact. The horse was disqualified. That's a fact. The only people that are not receiving relief in this are the bettors. And who is responsible for that? It's Bob Baffert, because he is responsible for the horse, and he perpetrated the fraud on bettors. So he's responsible. So I would love to get a day in court, and just let's discuss it and litigate it. But I don't know what's going to happen. The ruling could come down tomorrow that yes, they're going to dismiss the case, and we're probably done at that point. I don't know. We may appeal, or the ruling could come down like, hey, you know what? The judge thinks that we have enough of a case to go forward and start gathering some evidence, and that wouldn't surprise me either.
Right.
But I think the point has been made, though. And I'm not just about moral victories. I mean, I want financial victory for people that were, frauded out of their money. But I think the point has been made.
Bianca. If you want to put my name down at the bottom of that, that's how you spell my last name. Because I'm one of those guys. I'm one of those guys who got cost a lot of money because of that. But before we let you go, I wanted to ask about your day job, because you're a political consultant. Is that correct? Yeah,
that's correct. That's the other connection to Carville.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, so I'm a political consultant. So I do political advertising all over the country, and heavily involved in the current midterm elections all over. Today's election day in Maryland, so if you're in Maryland, go vote.
So can you? Before I'm hesitant to bring this up. It's such a minefield with like the racing public, and there's so many.
I'm used to it. Bring it up.
There's so many Trump people, I'm sure, that are listening to this. So I don't want to go too crazy with it, but you just give me like an overall view as someone who's done it for a long time. Just what do you think of how crazy American politics has gotten?
So as a citizen. I'm just like most people. I'm totally fed up with the way the system is working, or actually not working. And so I feel the same frustration that, most voters have when things go wrong in the country. Why can't we just fix it in Washington? Because it's just not, they don't fix it. Okay. So we're in a really bad place. I mean, because nothing is getting done. And when nothing gets done, people suffer. So I'm just as frustrated as the other person. On the other hand, I'm in this business, and the business has never been better. There's more money, and this may be the cause of the first thing that I said, why nothing gets done. But there's more money in politics than there ever has been. I mean, it is a multi-billion-dollar industry on the political side, spending. I mean, for the wallet, that's a great thing, for my business, but for governing and legislating, it's awful, obviously, so we're in a really bad spot. I mean, we're just in a bad spot,
I take that point about it seems like now there's just endless campaigning. There's so little emphasis on actually governing once you get into office. Like I saw this like with the Roe versus Wade decision recently, and whatever you feel about that, whether you're pro-choice, pro-life, whatever, I think a lot of people who are pro-choice were pissed off that when the ruling first came down, the first reaction of a lot of the Democrats was to send fundraising messages. And it's like, well, you're in power right now. Don't tell me you can't do anything and just say to give me more money to get elected next time. So I feel like that's what you were talking about, where it's good for guys like you, and I'm sure you do a great job, but I just don't know how we get back to that point where it becomes about governing with the power that we gave you, like how do we get back there?
Well, when we opened the floodgates with Citizens United decision to allow corporations and, to participate in the political protests from an electoral standpoint, again, I don't think we can put that genie back in the bottle. And what we have not really corporations, but we have people that own corporations, billionaires on both sides. And I hate to use the both sides argument because it doesn't hold up. But there are Republican billionaires and there are Democratic billionaires that are influencing these elections, and they're spending their money. And God bless them, because it's it's freedom that we have that in the country. But there must be, disclosure, and there must be. I don't know if there can be limits, but there has to be full disclosure, and I don't think we're there yet because we have so many. There are entities that we work for that are they never report donors. So we spend a lot of money. We don't report donors because it's not you're not required. So there's just an awful lot of money, and it's kind of corrupted the process as we knew it. But I think it can be fixed, and I think as a country, we're going to survive. I do believe we're going to see some darker times ahead, though.
I totally agree. I wish I didn't feel that way. And I think the thing that a lot of people don't get is that, like you say, there are right-wing billionaires, there are liberal billionaires. I think most of those people are committed to the status quo because that shit is working out great for them. And I don't think it's this real pitched battle between ideologies when it comes to really, really uber rich people. I think they're both committed to keeping things the way they are. And I think that's the root of what you were saying, that, nothing ever gets done in Washington.
Well, the system that's not working for us, as you said, Joe, is working for somebody.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think there's a lot of truth to what you said. I think there are some exceptions, maybe many on both sides that, they are ideologues and they want to see a certain
for sure
policy passed. But there's also let's just, I mean, this is working for me.
Yeah.
So let's keep it working.
Yeah. What are all the little people complaining about? All right, Michael, you've been very, very generous with your time. And I know you're a soapbox guy because you brought it up earlier. Is there anything else that you want to complain about, rave about, rant about before we get out of here? The floor is yours.
There's so many things. I think we could take another 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful one day that we'll see the larger casino company, the DraftKings and the FanDuels, start offering some sort of, props on jockeys and trainers and, horses winning and how many, that kind of thing on a daily basis. Cause I think that would be a nice avenue for us to invest in. But again, I think it's also part of the problem is the regulation. They have to go get approval from commissions and gaming commissions, racing commissions, horsemen's groups. It's just it's a mess.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you love a same game parlay on Traverse Day or something?
Yeah.
That would be Chad Brown over and under 2, Jose Ortiz over and under 3. That kind of thing. Those things would be, and that's what will attract the horse racing better into horse racing.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to be win, play, show, trifecta, superfecta, or these freaking jackpot things, which are the worst. I think those are the worst things.
20 minutes on the jackpot wagering, I think you'd be good.
I mean, the jackpot thing is just, it takes so much money out of the game, you know, and so there's no churn. But I think if we could ever get DraftKings or FanDuel or whomever to get some props on horse racing, that would be a major, major step.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much potential there, like you're saying, and so much potential for crossover to bring more bettors from sports betting to here. Yeah. And also just combining it with other sports, like you bet the Chargers to win that night with so-and-so to win the Trafford. Right. It's like, why is that not possible?
It's not possible, Joe. Not in the world we live in, unfortunately.
Right. On that scary note,
maybe not ever. I don't know. But look, I know that they're looking at it. I mean, I know Johnny Avello at DraftKings. He's a huge horse guy. I mean, big time horse person. He is looking at it. It's just difficult to bring. And I don't know that the game is sustainable without bringing in new people.
Nope.
At this point.
Agreed. Yeah. So let's all hope for a little bit more crossover. It can be an opportunity. It doesn't have to be a threat, having sports betting be legal. Michael Beychok, thank you so much for the time. This was great. I'd love to get a drink with you sometime in Saratoga. Continue this conversation. Appreciate the time, my man.
Thank you, Joe. I enjoyed it.
Great stuff. Okay, so I mentioned in the open that we are now sponsored by the Breeders' Cup here at Bettor Things with Joe Bianca. It's so exciting to have them aboard. They're obviously a huge name in racing. And like I said earlier, the gold standard in international championship racing. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to do a handicapping segment for every weekend that there are nationally televised Breeders' Cup win and you're in challenge races. And we'll kick it off this week with the Grade 1 $1 million TVG.com Haskell Invitational this Saturday, July 23rd at Monmouth Park. The Win and You're In program, if you're not, you're probably familiar, but if you're unfamiliar, is an immensely successful and popular initiative the Breeders' Cup launched in 2007 that features a constantly increasing schedule of big races, mainly throughout the summer and fall, that provide fees paid entries along with travel allowances for the corresponding Breeders' Cup races for the winners of various challenge races. It's been great for the Breeders' Cup, but honestly, it's also been great for the array of tracks these races are run at. And in a racing landscape where we're stuck with a lot of short fields and trainers ducking races, looking for the easiest spots, this is an incentive. And incentives like this bolster the fields of those races, give us a more full racing schedule with full top-class fields on the road to the Breeders' Cup. So I'm really excited for this partnership. It's a natural one. I would be handicapping these races anyway. I'm sure all of you watching and listening are going to be handicapping these races anyway. So it's going to be a lot of fun the next 6 or 8 weeks or so in the summer and fall. The Haskell is a very special race every year on the calendar, and Monmouth Park is a really special place. If you haven't been there, I strongly suggest you go if you're ever near the New Jersey coast. It's got a similar vibe to Saratoga in that it's a beautifully preserved historic track with a real kind of summer day party vibe to it, and great atmosphere. People come to bring their coolers and hang out with friends and family at the track, and this beautiful little ocean breeze comes in while you're watching horses run. It's bliss in the summer. The Haskell is the centerpiece of the meet. It's been run since 1968 every year at 1 1/8 miles. This year it goes as race 12 on a 14-race program with a post time of 5:45 Eastern time. So let's get into it. Let's get into handicapping the Haskell and a little bit of the races outside or surrounding the Haskell. We have an eight horse field in the Haskell with 2 horses expected to take the bulk of the wagering attention, but each have something to prove, which is what makes this a bettable race. A lot of times you see those short prices, you want to steer clear, but both Jack Christopher and Taba, who were the main contenders, have some questions to answer. Jack Christopher, to me, pound for pound, looks like the most talented 3-year-old in the country today in what looks like at least an above average crop, if not an elite crop. He's undefeated in 4 starts by a combined 25 1/4 lengths, including 2 Grade 1 wins. And his race in the Woody Stevens was something to behold. We'll show the stretch run of that final 20 seconds or so. You generally don't see horses show the kind of acceleration he produced in the final furlong of that race. He came home in 35.71 for his final 3/8. And, you know, what looked to be a kind of a comfortable win turned into an absolute rout in the blink of an eye. And he's also proven that while he's plenty fast, he doesn't need the lead. So he's capable, I think, of letting someone else go, at least one horse go in the Haskell if they're hell-bent on getting to the front. But with that being said, he's never been around 2 turns. There's an old adage in betting horses that I'm sure a lot of you have heard. I find it to generally be true that you don't take horses at short prices doing something they've never done before. And this is a turning point race for Jack Christopher in terms of what he's going to be asked to do the rest of the year, whether he's going to stay at a mile or try to stretch out and be a Breeders' Cup Classic winner going 1.25 miles. And while Chad Brown has shown immense confidence in him, even he doesn't know. He doesn't know until it happens whether or not he can go 2 turns and be the same horse that he is going 1 turn. And let's be clear, if he is, he's going to win this race. But we don't know that yet, and his pedigree lean sprint as well. His Damn Russian No Blushin' was eased in her only start going beyond 6.5 furlongs. Her second Damn Blushing O'Gideon never traveled further than 6 furlongs. His sire Munnings and Damn Sire Half Hours were sprinter miler types. So there's no guarantee in his pedigree, as brilliant as he is, that he's going to be able to stretch out to 2 turns in 1 1/8 miles. Going to Taba. Taba has similarly been one of the most impressive 3-year-olds of 2022. Debuted with a 102 buyer and a 7.5 length win going 6 furlongs at Santa Anita. He was ambitiously placed in the Santa Anita Derby after that, asked to stretch out 3 furlongs and step into a grade 1 in just his second career start, which is basically unheard of. And he validated that confidence. He did so remarkably professionally for a horse with so little seasoning, switched off beautifully, and ran away from a really talented stablemate of his in Messier, who had much more foundation going into that race. He could easily vault to the top tier of the 3-year-old division. He's been a little bit forgotten recently if he wins this race. And while he doesn't have quite as much early speed as Jack Christopher, he's shown he's fast enough to not let that rival run away and hide if nobody else goes. But similar to Jack Christopher, he's got questions to answer. And for him, it's about where his current form stands. He was fairly close to a fast pace in the Kentucky Derby, but the fact of the matter is he never did any real running, never made a move, and didn't switch leads in the stretch, which is never a great sign. And in my opinion, he ran the worst race of the 3 Derby horses running in the Haskell, even though he was the first among them across the wire, considering White Barrio's extreme ground loss around both turns. And the fact that Cyberknife at least launched a little bit of a bid on the far turn before he flattened out badly. And those two will be significantly bigger prices than Taba on Saturday. So the wagering strategies for this race will be A, find a horse or 2 to back on the win end. And this is one of those rare scenarios because you have not only 1, but 2 horses who are going to be below 2 to 1. So you're essentially guaranteed to get at minimum 4 to 1 on anybody else in the race you like, probably more like 5 or 6 to 1. So that's going to be my first play. B, going to play saver exactas with the 2 favorites over my picks because I do respect both of them as much as I have questions about their vulnerability as favorites. And C, find somewhere to lean in the pick 4 outside of the Haskell, spread in the Haskell, and then play a second smaller ticket pressing Jack Christopher and Taba, because I think if you can beat them, I don't know that you're going to beat them for first and second within the race, but if you can beat them in the multi-race sequences where I think a lot of people are going to lean on those 2, I think you can get paid. So let's figure out who we like. Let's look at the rest of the field by process of elimination. 2 horses can't win this race without running by far the best race of their life. That's One Time Willard and King of Hollywood. Benevengo is not entirely possible. He's been working up a storm over the track, but he's still very, very unlikely. Crucially, though, Benevengo and One Time Willard bring early speed, which may make things tougher on Jack Christopher and to a lesser extent Taba. So that leaves us with White Barrio, Cyberknife, and Howling Time. White Barrio comes out of a second in the Ohio Derby, while the latter 2 came out of a real thrilling stretch battle in the Matt win, which ended with Cyberknife winning by the slimmest of photos after Howling Time had set the pace and battled back super gamely in deep stretch. Overall, while I respect White Barrio and the races he ran earlier this year at Gulfstream Park, I've yet to see him reproduce that form outside of Gulfstream. And I thought he really didn't have any excuse in the Ohio Derby. He sat in the perfect spot of dueling leaders, and he still got outkicked by Tawnyport, who I don't think anybody considers, at least right now, a top-class 3-year-old. He's stepping up to face top-class 3-year-olds after he couldn't hold off Tawnyport. And I just think he may have a little bit more punch going shorter. Even in his Florida Derby win, he ran a very slow final furlong of over 14 seconds. So that leads me to the 2 Matt Win horses. And I just think overall the Matt Win was a stronger prep, in my eyes, than the Ohio Derby, despite Classic Causeway coming back out of the ladder and winning the Belmont Derby on turf. You know, these comparisons are a little messy to make one to one sometimes, but there was one horse who ran in both races named Droppin' G's. He was beaten 14 lengths in the Matt Win and 7 1/4 lengths in the Ohio Derby. So that's a big difference for a horse who conceivably was in similar form going into both of those races. And to add to that, Third place finisher in the Mat win, Rattle and Roll, who was a grade 1 winner as a 2-year-old, came back to win the American Derby next time out, improving his buyer figure by 7 points. So out of Cyberknife and Howling Time, I prefer Cyberknife because he's got the right style here to save ground, sit in the second flight, 4 to 6 lengths off the leader, kick home, strongest of the non-favorites, should the pace get hot. Howling Time was able to rate and win as a 2-year-old, and Joe Talamo, who's his rider in this race, would be wise to back off the pace and try that again on Saturday. But with him having success in his last 2 races on the lead, it's tough, I think, for connections to change what had been working. So he definitely could get caught up in the pace, whereas I don't have that worry with Cyberknife. I know Florent Giroux is just going to sit, be patient, try to make one run, and hope the speed comes back. All right, so here are the plays. We got a $200 budget for this race and for the pick 4 combined. So in the Haskell, I'm going with $70 to win on number 1, Cyberknife, $30 to win on number 4, Howling Time, then $10 exactas with number 2, Taba, and number 7, Jack Christopher, over Cyberknife and Howling Time. So within the race, I'm betting $140 total. And the pick 4, we're going to lean on number 3, Search Results, in the Molly Pitcher. She ran a terrific race for Chad Brown, dueling the great Latruska, champion Latruska, into defeat in the Ogden Phipps before understandably tiring a bit to be 3rd late in the race. Anything close to that effort, she's going to win the Molly Pitcher. She just outclasses those horses, and she's got the kind of speed to be successful on the Monmouth Strip, which is generally a little bit more favorable to speed horses. Got the grade 1 United Nations, which is right before the Haskell. We'll use the top 3 from the Manhattan, who are all coming back in this race. Number 1, Adamo. Number 4, Tribuvan, who won the United Nations last year. And number 10, Gafo, along with number 3, Temple, who I think is the horse in that race. It could make some noise, hopefully at a square price, 6 or 8 to 1 or so. And the Matchmaker, which is the first leg of the pick 4, will spread a bit using a huge bomb in number 1, Hull Bodemeister, she's got poor form right now, but she's bred to like turf. Her dam was completely a turf horse. Also use number 2, Lamista, number 4, Lady Rockstar, number 5, Flighty Lady, and number 7, Vigilante's Way. So here's the pick 4 ticket. We'll put it up on the screen. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7 with 3, with 1, 3, 4, 10, with 1, 2, 4, 7, which is $40 for $50. And then we'll press with the favorites in the Haskell, going 1, 2, 4, 5, 7 with 3, with 1, 3, 4, 10, with 2, 7, which adds up to another $20 for 50 cents, which is $60 total. The pick 4 starts in race 9. So we got all these plays up on the screen. Best of luck if you're following along. Thank you again to the Breeders' Cup for joining us on Better Things with Joe Bianca. I'm so excited for this partnership, and it really does kick off with a nice card and a nice race on Saturday, a race that, like I said, a lot of us will be handicapping and watching no matter what, but it really adds to it with you get the star power of Jack Christopher and Taba, but then they have a little bit of vulnerability as well, so you can potentially make some money in the race too. So looking forward to it on Saturday. If you're anywhere near the Jersey Shore, you definitely should head down to Monmouth Park. It's a phenomenal day of racing. The weather looks like it's going to be pretty good, and cannot wait for it. All right, so that's going to do it for this edition of Better Things with Joe Bianca. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks again to the Breeders' Cup for joining us. Thank you to Michael Beychok for coming on and talking to me. Had a lot of fun in this episode. Best of luck this weekend betting the Haskell. We'll be back in a couple weeks. We'll be back Whitney week to preview that race. That's another star-studded race that I think a lot of people have circled on their calendar. So that'll be a lot of fun. But first, enjoy the Haskell and enjoy all the racing action. The rest of July, we'll see in a little bit. I want to thank Patty Wolf, our producer, and our editors, Anthony LaRocca, Leah LaRocca, and Nathan Wilkinson. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Better Things, Joe Bianca.